Well, welcome to the shop, everyone. I was thinking as I progress with the other big projects I have going on, I really don't have the time or the things hooked up to do any fabricating on that engine. And so I thought maybe I could just tell some stories about this old Nova. This old Nova, I think we got back somewhere in the early 90s, maybe 91, 92, not sure, somewhere in the early 90s. I actually had got it from a friend. You know, he's a older gentleman, and he had a Corvette, he had a Chevelle, and a truck that I would do. I'd work on them for him, side work, make a little money on the side. And anyways, I think I got this old Nova here. I think we traded out some work. And this Nova here, he had bought new to deliver mail in. And so it was a plain Janer. You know, it had a straight six. It did have an automatic, but it had drum brakes, no power assist, manual steering, no power windows. It didn't even have a place for the radio. You know, the radio, it's never even had a radio in it. And it had a matte floor. And it was painted sort of a brownish mustard color. I don't know the color of it. So anyways, had the car quite a few years before I got it going, saving up money and buying parts as I could. And first name the old thing got was, we called it the mustard seed. The mustard seed is what we called it. And so anyways, the reason I wanted this car or got this car is probably different than most people. I am not, I mean, I like Novas. I do. I like them, but they're not my pick car. It's not the car that I always dreamed of or anything like that, but it's just a car that came available at that time. And I like, you know, Chevrolets. Now, you know, I'm not a only Chevrolet person. It just seemed like at that time the Chevys were a little bit cheaper to build, and this one here, you know, came available to me and I was able to get it. But earlier on, before this, in my earlier years, kind of, I don't know, somehow in school, I'm dyslexic or whatever they want to call it. You know, I can't read well, and so you don't do, you know, all your grades are always no good. I wasn't very athletic, so, you know, couldn't, so, you know, I never had anything that I could do well. And you know, and those are formative years. Those are when you're trying to figure out what you are, who you are. But somehow I got an old lawnmower. And I started working on that old lawnmower and got it running somehow. And I just had this infatuation with these little motors. And then went from that lawnmower to a mini bike. I bought a frame off a friend and looked around for a motor and got a clutch, and I could get these little mini bikes going as well. And so it just suited me. And I still have kind of a soft spot for these things because, you know, they were the first thing that I really realized somehow I could get an engine and a mechanical thing going that, you know, most other people I knew anyways didn't have an interest or couldn't do it, whichever it was. So anyways, that got me into the engines, the cars, reading Hot Rod, Carcraft, you know, all those books, you know, any kind of article they had. And early on, you know, just out of like high school, got some friends, you know, and they had some cars. What did I have back then? I think I had a Firebird. I had like a 75 Pontiac Firebird. And then I got a 75 Pontiac Trans Am 4-speed car. But anyways, ended up getting married. And when I got married, you know, the money that I was making, whatever I was making, went into, you know, where we lived and bills and stuff like that. And then we had 2 children, and you know how it is when you're young, just starting out. You know, you got to spend the money on the right stuff. And I did not have the money to have any kind of a street race car, but I had friends who did. And like you say, somehow I was able to work on the engines and get them to run a little better than they were. So I kind of did a lot of tuning on a lot of the cars back then. And when I say the cars back then, we had nothing, at least in my group, we had nothing like today. I want to bet, you know, we didn't have a track. I had never even been to a drag strip. We just get on a back road and run. Heck, we had a car that spin a tire. Woo! I mean, that thing was stout. But anyways, you know, our normal hot rod was a cam, set of headers, aluminum intake, probably 600 Holly. And that was it, you know. And man, if you had somebody run across a gear, that had a gear, man, that was something special. So, you know, probably anywhere from 15 to 13-second cars is what we were messing with. And but we had fun with that stuff. I mean, we enjoyed it, man. A win, we just enjoyed it. So, you know, a lot of times that we'd gather parts up. Like, I know some guy in this area, he had some kind of a Mopar that was the car to beat. And we got together, and one friend had a set of like 10-inch rims with 50s on it, and another person had a nitrous oxide system, and another person had a 4-speed Z28. And we put all the parts together and went out that night and was able to you know, win that race. And it's just stuff like that, just meeting up on these old back roads and racing people. And we had a lot of fun doing that. I was really not ever, you know, a person driving the car or had the car, but I was always kind of the person they go to get the engine running as good as it could, you know, with what we had back then. And then that led into building some engines. And I had took auto mechanics in high school. And so anyways, you know, started building some motors and porting heads. And I'm like everybody else, I had, I don't know, a lot of like NASCAR engine builder books, you know, whatever they would put out. I can't remember the names and stuff. And I also had some kind of a head porting book too. And this is a long time back, and I can't remember the name of it either. But anyways, that's what I started doing, grinding heads, building motors, and I enjoyed it. And I probably got to build people's motors because, you know, I didn't charge hardly anything because I liked doing it. And so then that got me into carburetors, and it was I think it was Hot Rod Magazine or Carcraft. I can't remember which one, but one of them had an article on how to build a flow bench. And I was on that, like, man, I built me one. And you know, I know it's not you know, some super flow whatever flow bench, but I learned a lot on that thing. That thing showed me a lot of porting techniques, what helped, what didn't, you know, seem to help. I even flowed, like one of the things I like to do was I would flow the intake valve in reverse, and I'd try different angles on the valve to find one that would like shear the air away, make the intake flow reverse as bad as I could, and make the exhaust flow the most I could in reverse. So, you know, that's some of the things you got to play with. And I remember the first time I had like some kind of old Ford head, and I had my clay, and I packed up the bottom of that port on that Ford, on that exhaust port, and man, the flow numbers jumped up. And I remember marveling how here I'm filling the floor up and the flow numbers are going up. So that helped me understand, you know, it's not how big something is necessarily, it's how to use that area. Actually, you know, my understanding, there's people who do this for a living. I don't do it for a living, haven't done it for a living. I don't even port anymore, you know. But my understanding at that time was, you know, it seemed the smaller the area you could have and produce good flow numbers seemed to work best for me. And so I had bought a Sioux valve grinding, a Sioux seat grinding, and so I kind of had got into port and cylinder heads for people, and gasket matching intake manifolds, and using the flow bench to discover certain things. And then it progressed into, I got to build some round track motors for some people around the area, some dirt motors and some asphalt motors. And so a friend of mine picked me up, and there's a engine building place not too far from here, well known, very high-end engine shop, and they had an engine dyno, an old engine dyno they had for sale, and we went up there and looked at it. And I'm telling you, I wanted it, but just young family, not having a lot of money, not even really a good place to put the thing and run it. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't pull the trigger and get it. So what I decided to do is I wanted me a car for a test bed, something I could build a motor, put it in a car, go to the drag strip, and not necessarily the time, the mile an hour, how fast mile an hour that car would go, and just drive it down there and enjoy that. And that's kind of how, or the reason I got this car was not necessarily to have a car that everybody wanted or the nicest show car. It was just basically to a test bed to try different things, go down there, run it, and see what I could learn, a test bed. And also you could build a motor, give somebody a ride, and then they could purchase the motor if they wanted to out of it. But anyways, that's how I got the car. Even though I got it in the early 90s, saving up money, it was just most of the money that I had available for the car itself came from just side work, and you're wanting to buy tools to do a better job as far as engine building. You're wanting to buy equipment to properly assemble engines, properly finish out heads, things like that. And so between the two of them fighting for money, let's see, I was building a round track motors for a chassis shop who built race cars, and they're the ones that put the cage in the car for some, trading out some work, and they put the roll cage in the car, and I also think they put the subframe connectors on it for me, some kind of trade out on some work. Let's see, the seats, I think everybody ran these seats. Some people don't like them. I mean, I don't think they're the safest seat anymore, but they fit me okay. The belts, let's see. This ought to tell us something. That keeps flipping over. I think 94. Is that right? 94? So it looks like in 94 is when I bought, the belts for the car. And probably the roll cage was before that. Save up to get the seats. One of those little shifters. And the first motor that I built for this thing was a small block 400. And now, like I say, back then, at least me anyways, and most of my friends, we couldn't we couldn't afford aluminum heads. Aluminum heads were beyond reach for most people. And so you just had stock parts. And so those stock parts is what you'd spend time on, and I call it fluffing them up, putting time and energy into it, improving it. Now, whether it makes any more horsepower, I don't know. But it just seemed like the more time you spent on the engine, maybe beam polishing the rods, deburring the block, you know, and the cylinder heads. Now, like I say, this one here, the first engine was a 400. I got a set of 441 heads. Those are open chamber heads. Those aren't even double hump heads, but they're a decent open chamber head. And I ported and ported those heads. I think I had, you know, it had 202 160 valves in it. I think I had bronze guides in it. Spent a lot of time on those cylinder heads. Got a Victor Jr. intake, and it's amazing, ain't it? I can't remember when I got this car exactly, some of the dates and stuff like that, but I can still tell you that camshaft was a Blue Racer. It was 244 at 50 duration on the intake and exhaust with a 110 lobe separation. Funny thing, I can remember that. Just a cheap cam. The pistons, I think, were just stock factory flat top piston. That bring the compression up a good bit. Now I did run a double pumper carb, and it was a 650, but I had knife edged the butterflies, you know, shaved the shafts down, put button head nuts in there, radius, you know, rounded everything, and you know, that was just a good running little carburetor. It is a very good running carburetor on this car. I think it started out with turbo 350 that was in it from the factory. I think I put a B&M shift kit in it. I put a Vega stall converter in it. And the rear end, I think it was a 430 gear posi unit. The first exhaust system I had on it, now I'd gone through renditions, you know, but the first exhaust was, I think, 2.5, and I had the super traps on the back where you could like adjust the muffles to make it noisier or louder, something like that. Now I have Flowmasters and a crossover. All that looks the same. Yeah, I mean, it's almost a time capsule how it was when I had it, other than the color of the paint. But anyways, in that stage, first time out, it was in the 7s. But I think the best I could get out of the car, now when I say 7s, I'm talking about 1/8 mile. We didn't have any 1/4 mile track around this area. Everything was 1/8 mile. So it was in the 7s, first time out. Even the tires. Now, for me, slicks back then were expensive, and I couldn't really afford it. But since I was building some of these round track engines, some of these guys running dirt, they had tires that were very close to this size. And these guys who were competing, you know, they wouldn't run those tires about 2-3 races. And they had plenty of tread left over, so I could get those tires for the car. And it was a sticky tire. It worked well. But anyways, in that trim, the best I got out of the motor and combination was somewhere in the 740s. That's about the best I could get out of her. And then later on, I bought some kind of not the nitrous system that you see on the car now, was another name brand one that I had got somewhere. And it was just a plate system, the cheap plate system. I think it was a 125 shot, is my best recollection. But anyways, with that plate on there, I don't remember if I finally bought some Mickey Thompsons to go on it or not. But anyways, in that configuration anyways, I could get it to do, on the right day, good track conditions, I could get it to run some 690s. And, you know, back then, although there's always faster out there, I'm not saying I was ever the fastest. I'm saying my comparison, that was good. I mean, that was all right. You know, we were enjoying it, having a lot of fun. So anyways, just sort of doing a backdrop story on kind of how some of this stuff started. And you know, that car, you know, I might have got it in the early 90s, but it took me many years, you know, saving up money for my weld wheels. Those were the wheels back then. Those are the ones you wanted, you know, and saving up the money to get those, and how enjoyable it was when I finally got the kind of money and was able to purchase them. I don't know, it was just an enjoyable thing. So anyways, just I'm gonna end it off there on this video. If you guys like this type thing, leave me a comment, and we'll continue with some more stories on the car if it seems to interest anybody. All right. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.